Morning. You're on.
Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. As Tina mentioned, I'm a nonverbal communication specialist. I am certified in body language. So this just means that I am like a glorified people watcher, I think is what that means. And what I want to really kind of lift up is our people skills. I believe that hard skills have been so valued, and that's what we learn in school, but people skills matter just as much. And that's really what attracted me to Tina, as we were passionate about communication. And my angle is, I believe if you have a solid foundation of body language, you are a much better communicator. If I can read the cues that someone is giving me and respond in real time with empathy, with civility, that makes for a better world. And then also too, when you have those skills, you can kind of hold the mirror up to yourself and say, oh, how am I showing up? What am I doing? So that really is kind of where the world I'm living in. And what we're going to do today is I'm going to cover 3 body language basics. And then we're going to look at how can we apply this in the virtual world. So we're going to dive right in, and I'm going to show you this picture. I can't see the chat, so Tina is going to moderate that. But this is a picture of the first televised presidential debate. So this was 1960. This was John F. Kennedy and Richard Nixon. And I just want you to put in the chat what you're noticing, or maybe why Kennedy won. What are you seeing in this picture? And while you're doing that, I'll just say what was so amazing about this is in 1960, not everyone had a television. So literally half of the nation watched the debate and half listened on the radio.
Right now, I'm seeing a lot in the chat here, Kristin.
Okay,
Robin says Kennedy is looking relaxed and attractive. Elvira says JFK looks relaxed and comes off as confident. Also, Nixon looks nervous. Confident posture and dress, says Stephanie about Kennedy. Darla says Kennedy was relaxed and professional. Nixon looks like he's ready to run away. Isn't that the truth? And Nixon has an awkward sitting position. That's a really good insight, Anna.
Yeah, okay. So first of all, yes, Kennedy is handsome. So let's own that. But, and I'll try and be brief because I honestly could talk about this photo all day. But in brief, the half of the nation that listened to the debate were sure that Nixon won. The half that watched it were sure that Kennedy won. And it was so perplexing that no candidate agreed to do another televised debate for another 16 years. 16 years. And that's really what was good is it got us really thinking about some of those nonverbal cues that we're sending off. Nixon was injured on the campaign trail. He hurt his knee. And if I've done my history right, I think he even kind of re-injured it going into the studio that night. So he's holding his knee. He's in that kind of awkward stance. They call that the runner's stance. That looks like he's going to leave. You don't want that in a leader. But the big thing I want to kind of point out with this picture is he's looking at Kennedy. That is the nonverbal cue for leader. If I ask a kid, would you like a cookie? Most likely they will look to their parents and get that okay. That they're nonverbally cueing that as the leader. And that's what he did to the entire nation. Is when he was introduced, he looked at Kennedy, where Kennedy, when he was introduced, he kept his eyes on the audience and talked to them.
Well, and building off of that, on this, there's a few other comments in the chat that Nixon looks ruffled. His jacket is buckling, which I think is interesting point of view. And then crossing the legs was a nonverbal sign of closure, of being more closed, someone notes. And then also being casual confidence is having that casual confidence seems much more pleasant, much more attractive.
Yes. Yes. Oh my gosh. Okay. So the clothing ornaments, like the clothing we wear, Nixon had lost weight. So his suit didn't fit as well. He did not agree to wear makeup where Kennedy did. So much was going on. He was sweating profusely so there was just so many nonverbals going off and people were picking up on that. So good job, guys. All right, in 30 minutes, people can send over 800 nonverbal signals. Kind of pick your study on that, but in brief, my goal is to make sure people can read them because it's like an entire channel of, like ping pong going back and forth. If you can't read that, you're missing a lot of communication. So
Bodies do tell a lot. I mean, I think it's interesting that 85% of your communication comes from facial expressions alone. So 800 messages in 30 minutes is quite a bit.
it's right. Okay. So put your guesses in. What percentage do you think it is? 10, 25, 50, or 60? How much of our communication is nonverbal?
We're getting some messages. I have 2 people voting for D. Another person voting D. D.
Okay. It's a smart crowd. I knew it. It is
Lots
D.
of D's.
It's D. And again, pick your study. There's millions out there, but anyway, it usually is between 60 to 93% of our communication is nonverbal. That heavily depends on context. There's a lot of situational variables there. But even if we go low and we say 60%, it's still more than half of our communication. And that's what I would like to highlight, because people are usually worried about, what am I going to say? I'm going in for an interview. I have a date. I have a presentation. What am I going to say? And that's important, but how you say it and how you are showing up are equally, if not more, important.
Well, this brings me back to a time when I was interviewing someone for a position, and talk about what he did in that interview. He was applying for a sales management position, walks in, sits down, puts his feet on my desk, and then proceeds to answer the question, blowing bubbles and chewing gum. And then at the end, spits his gum in the wastebasket next to my desk. So talk about all the nonverbal, no, don't do that during an interview. That's stuck with me for years.
Well, and that was for real. Like
that was for real. That's not made up. So he did not get a second interview, nor did he get the job.
I would have thought I was being punked.
I know.
Is there a hidden camera? Okay, so what do I mean when I say nonverbal communication? I don't mean a mime. I mean body language. So that really means facial expressions, posture, stance. If I show you this picture here very quickly, who do you want teaching your course?
I definitely like the gal with the red tank top.
Right. Okay. And you know that immediately. Like that was split second, you're like the girl in the red, because the others are giving off cues of tired, insecure, etc. That we can just read by how someone is walking, their posture, that's the girl that is confident. I also mean tone of voice, and people often forget kind of the vocal part of communication, but your volume, your tone, your pitch, the question inflection, that's where you go up at the end of a sentence. So it's like you're asking a question and you're begging a negotiation. And if you do phone interviews, if you've been in telemarketing, anything like that, the power of voice, that you can hear a smile through the phone, that there's a whole lot of depth just from our vocal tone.
And what I've heard and read is that women tend to have the propensity to put our vocal inflection up at the end of sentences, even when we're not asking questions. So it's being aware that when you have a confident stance, that you want to make sure that your pitch and your tone match the content of your message.
Right. And we tend to, the other disadvantage that women tend to have is we favor lower tones. We take them a little more seriously. That's something too, that as we get nervous, we'll often, our voice will go up. So I'm going off script here, but one tip, if you take a breath in and you speak on the out breath. So if I say, hi, my name is Kristin, or if I take a breath in, hi, my name is Kristin. It relaxes your vocal cords and brings you down vocally.
Well, and someone mentioned in the chat, I think this is a good point, that women tend to look for consensus. I think by and large, from a gender perspective, or checking to make sure that others are following along. I think it is that checking for understanding, consensus, connection. We do have that from a gender difference, a higher level of need for that. So I think we sometimes show that in our voice and nonverbal cues.
Absolutely. But that's a strength too, that
absolutely
you're bringing the group together. Okay, and then ornaments, which you already picked up on. So ornaments are simply how we're showing up. This is one of those things we can have some control over. Your hair, your makeup, your clothing, all of those things really broadcast a bit about who you are. And that's why the fashion industry, right, has so much power. It's why companies often require a uniform. They can control a little bit how you're presenting to the world. But, skin color, gender, build, all that, you are what you are. But we are making snap decisions based on a lot of those variables.
It's really your personal branding. I think as far as not only what you do with your hair, with the colors that you choose to wear, and how you present yourself. I love bright, striking colors or darks, and then pop, some bright lipstick. And that's part of my personal brand. I think being aware of what that is, but also aligning to what your profession is, so that's effective for what you're trying to do. Because I know my animated Disney style works well for certain organizations and people and kids, but it might need to be a softened brand or style and modified based on the given audience and circumstance.
Perfect. And that's what understanding all this does. It gives you the ability to kind of toggle between the two, to be very intentional, which is leverage. Nonverbal signals are 12 to 13 times more powerful than accompanying words. We default to nonverbal. So just even with vocal tone, if I say, I'm really happy to be here today, you'd be like, or I can say, I'm really happy to be here today. Same words, but you're defaulting differently.
Or nice hair. If you roll your eyes, and do you really mean it? That's where sarcasm comes into play as far as facial expressions accompanied by tone of voice. Nice hair does not mean nice hair.
Right. And that's why texts can be so hard. Like, if people say, got it, sure. You're like, got it or got it? That's why emojis are a way to kind of add in your intent.
It's a nonverbal communication visually.
Right. That's why they're powerful. Okay. We're going to cover 3 of the basics. This is the first impressions. How long do you think you have?
Not long.
Okay. Or maybe people could put in the chat. How long do we think we have?
For first impression, 3 to 6 seconds, 30 seconds, 10 seconds, 4 seconds, 3 seconds, 10 seconds. Oh, a good variety here.
Well, okay. Again, pick your study, but it's very brief. I would say 7 seconds is getting long. It's usually like 7 seconds or less. I would say more like one or 2 seconds, where we're really starting to size someone up and put them in a category. Now, first impressions happen the moment someone sees you. It's not the first time you speak. It's the first time they see you. And I wish my little high school self would have known this, because I was the girl wearing black, very quiet, don't notice me, don't talk to me. And I thought I was like under the radar. No one knew I was around. No, it's when they see you. And this in virtually, this happens digitally. So did you put out a picture of me at all when you were telling me?
Yeah, well, with our one picture of, the snapshot that I took with
Oh, okay.
your book. Yeah, it had your picture there.
Okay, because that's often our first impressions are online, where we're getting our first glimpse of someone digitally, and you're already forming an opinion. And before we even started, you were seeing me and you already were putting me in a category. And those 4 categories are friend, foe, potential mate, or indifference. And for today's purposes, I'm going to say we are hoping to get in the friend bucket, right? Indifference is the one we want to stay out of. There's so much going on in the world that we don't want to be overlooked. I don't want to be your enemy. I want to get in that friend bucket. So I want you to remember this acronym when you think about first impressions. They're actually pretty permanent. When we put someone in a bucket, it's really hard to move them out. It's not impossible. But if hopefully you've put me in the friend bucket, and then the rest of the time today, your brain is cherry picking and saying, see, she's your friend. You were right. if you've put me in a different category, your brain is reaffirming that. So you want to make sure that you are showing up in the way you want to show up. Then accurate. Our brain is pretty darn good. We are 76% accurate, which isn't perfect, but it's gotten pretty good just from a self-preservation standpoint, that we need to know, we see someone coming up, what bucket are they going in? We need, survival. Our brain never stops. It is always scanning and pretty much saying, are you safe? Are you safe? Are you safe?
I mean, when you looked at those past pictures, there were definitely a couple of those that were like, creep alert, not feeling safe.
Right. Yeah. Like this guy here. I don't know if you can see my cursor. Creepy.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Mysterious. I mean, so you have different impressions very immediately. So good. Okay. And it's immediate, again, very, not a lot of time. We form those opinions, and we are basing it on nonverbals. So the ornaments, our facial expressions, our vocal tone, all of that comes under the umbrella of nonverbal communication. All right, cool study done by Frank Berneri, who really wanted to tap into, what is this stuff about first impressions? So the study he designed is he had trained evaluators interview candidates for 20 minutes and then asked them to rate the candidates on warmth, competence, and competence. So they conduct the interviews, they film the interviews, and they get their ratings. He then takes the filmed version and he shows it to a second set of trained evaluators and says, I want you to rate these candidates. But in the second group, he only shows them the first 20 seconds. And what he was going for was really to gauge if there isn't a lot of word exchange. So other than coming in, shaking someone's hand, saying, hi, I'm Kristin, nice to meet you. That was about it. Then they sat down and then the interview started. And what he found is that within 20 seconds, people were giving the same types of ratings, which is fascinating and terrifying at the same time, that we are that good. We kind of know. And maybe, Tina, is anyone here in the HR world?
I worked in HR for a year, and those interviews, you do get that immediate impression. And I would always talk with our administrative assistant, because how they behaved in the lobby waiting for the interview was also insightful into the type of person that they are. Did they greet the person, have a good conversation, or did they ignore the individual and treat her as lesser? So those kinds of impressions were very important, and you could feel the warmth, the confidence and competence of those various candidates. And so she and I would talk about that. And 20 seconds, I absolutely agree. It's interesting that you can do that. Accuracy is there.
Yeah. And I spent some time in HR as well. And again, you would have someone on a resume look great, and within seconds you're like, nope. Or someone whose resume didn't look that great, but you met them and you're like, they are amazing. So a lot of cues going on there. All right, so that is first impressions. Now I want to talk about trust indicators, because this is a huge thing. We do business with people we know, like, and trust. My question for you is, what part of the body do you notice first?
Put in the chat. I'm curious. What do y'all think? What do you notice first? Eyes, hair, eyes, smile.
Mm-hmm. No one said teeth. I usually get teeth.
I know. Teeth is part. I think teeth are part of the smile.
Okay. So of course, yes, you are all right. We are definitely noticing hair, smile, eyes, teeth, all of that. But the one thing that most people don't realize is what our brain, because it's always saying, are you safe? Are you safe? Our hands. Hands are our trust indicators. This is literally why a police officer says, put your hands up. Because hands can do harm. They very quickly are telling us friend or foe. Whether you are processing it or not, your brain sure is. And there is even a study where jurors find defendants who put their hands under the table as more sneaky, untrustworthy, and deceitful.
I love that when you're talking and you're one of the few, I actually can see your hand gestures. And so I feel like I'm part of the communication, and there is that level of trust.
Right. Yes. So thank you. I've worked on it. But The jurors, I don't think were thinking, I can't see their hands, I don't trust them. It was just something subconsciously that said, I don't know, I don't trust this person. So I want you to just really remember the power of that. Now, as Tina said, so using hands, I am in the camp of it's a really great thing. So if you are someone who can't speak, if your hands are at your side, rejoice. This is your happy day. Try to get them out of your pockets. If you're a pocket person, don't do that. The beauty of using your hands is kind of twofold. One, when I speak with my hands, it lessens my cognitive load. I'm literally able to explain better when I can use my hands. So it's helping me, but it's helping you because you are seeing things on two levels. You're hearing it and seeing it. So it's like underlining or bolding. It makes you a better, more effective communicator. So I would say you really want to start working on hand gestures, making sure that you're keeping your hands visible. And we can talk more a little bit later, but I want you to just think of the spectrum. Too much is, not good. Too little is not good. We're going for that just right spot. And my quick little tip is if you think of like a strike zone, keeping your hands in the strike zone is a pretty safe default. If you're talking and you're keeping them here, that's considered kind of normal. If you want to show enthusiasm, if I bring my hands out of the box, I don't know if you can see that because I can't see myself.
Yes.
But if you bring them out, this shows more energy. I have a big idea, listen to me. It's all my intent. But if I talk the entire time like this, you would start to think like, oh my gosh, right? It's too much. If I put my hands at my side, that brings the energy down. And I can usually start to hear it in my voice, even where I'm becoming a little more quiet. Again, it's the control. If you are presenting, if you are talking with people, do you want to bring the energy up? Do you want to bring it down? Where do you want to be?
Well, it's noting the space and the energy too, particularly if you're giving a presentation. It's a very different experience if you're in an auditorium with 1,000 people. Bigger gestures, you want the people in the back row to feel that energy. Whereas if you're in a smaller conference room with a group of professionals, you would maybe do smaller gestures in comparison. If you're doing a big, exciting workshop for families and kiddos, you might have those big, happy facial expressions to complement the gestures.
Right. So know your audience. And you're talking proxemics, kind of your distance, like what venue are you in? So great. All right, then our last one that I want to cover is purposeful gazing. This is getting at eye contact. And of course, I'm guessing your mom and dad said, make good eye contact. There's a couple different ways. The two I want to highlight today are professional gazing and social gazing. So professional gazing is when you are having a conversation with someone, you're making eye contact, when you break gaze. So what I mean by that is when you look away, because if I keep talking to you and I don't stop looking, it starts to get really creepy, right? So when you naturally look away, people who tend to go up on the forehead, so it's like a triangle, this is seen as very competent. This is a very capable way of interacting with someone. This is when they track eye patterns of leaders often tend to do this one. It's a very competent pose. So this is something especially for women to really take note of, that if you want to be kind of viewed as an equal, you're in a professional setting, this is a good one to do. The other one is social gazing, and this one is fine, this is good. It's where you're looking at the person's eyes, but when you are breaking gaze, you're dropping low. So it's like an upside down triangle. You're looking more at their mouth. This is a high warmth cue. This is very friendly, very social. Again, no right or wrong, but use this knowledge appropriately. Again, a work setting, you might want to really focus on being more professional. If you are someone that is told you're intimidating, you're hard to approach, you might want to start using some social gazing, because that will add a little bit of warmth to you. All right, and I just want to touch on, so oxytocin is a chemical that is released when we touch someone. Touch is the quickest way to build connection. That's why handshakes are so important, or even just like a touch on the arm. We've been missing that. We've not been doing that. Oxytocin is nicknamed the cuddle hormone. and it literally is what allows you to feel connected. Second to touch is eye contact. So that's what I want to share, that especially in the virtual world, you want to make sure that you are connecting at least visually with the other person, because we're missing that whole aspect of touch.
Well, and isn't that interesting? It's been a year and I'm a big hugger. And so it's my husband and my son get to enjoy extra hugs.
Bonus. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so now I want to dive in. It looks like what we have, like 10 minutes or so. I just want to dive into how we can apply this to the virtual world. So we've got our 3 basics here. I'll start with those trust indicators, those hands. One thing you can do is, if you happen to have a chair and it has adjustable armrests, if you bring your armrest up, it's a way to remind you to keep your hands visible and expressive. But no big deal if you don't have a chair. That is fine. That is just one little tip, and it typically makes you a little bit more open, and that's a better presence. Our brain gives more weight to nonverbal gestures. So just remembering, use your gestures, because our brain is defaulting to them. That if I said, we're going to cover 3 body language basics today, your brain should be exploding a little bit. And that's hard for me to do, because I want to go 3. We're going to do 3. They're thinking, no, it's 5. What's happening? We give a lot of weight to gestures. Or same thing if I would say, I have a really big idea. You're like, what? We give it a lot of weight. Okay, when the pandemic first started, I started to get really intrigued with how are these late night shows gonna do interviews? How is this gonna happen? And I was incredibly interested, because actors and actresses are trained communicators. They are professional communicators. So I just want to show you how effective hands can be. This was an interview with Chris Hemsworth and Jimmy Kimmel. And I just took a couple screen grabs early on in his interview, but you can just see how effective he is at using his hands. You can almost feel like you can almost guess what he's maybe talking about. Something's little, right? I feel like his interview was almost like a masterclass in using your hands. He just really did a great job.
Well, and to me, your gestures shape the communication. It's you want it to echo what you're saying, so that together it's a unified means of communicating.
Yes. Yeah. Right. So the host needs to be right there with him too. Here's the lovely Jennifer Aniston. You can see her using, it took her, I want to say, like a half a minute to start using hand gestures, but then she really got into it. And you can see again how expressive she is with her hands. And I want to point out that this one here, the upper left, this means like it's personal. It matters. That's something that you can very easily do to show if someone says something and it's heartfelt. If you even just kind of do this, they know that you're feeling it. Or she was actually saying, I feel like I'm managing well through the pandemic. So she's talking about herself. And then the last one, all right, is our Matthew McConaughey. And he, if you don't know, is a professor at the University of Texas at Austin. How would you like Matthew to be your teacher? Yes, please. Anyway, he early on sent out, he just made like a 5-minute video, sent it out to the students at University of Texas at Austin, saying, handle yourself well, be proud of how you're dealing with this situation, etc. But look at all of his hand gestures, and I could have gotten a whole lot more, but he's kind of known, I think, for talking with his hands. I like that middle one, he does a lot. Anyway, point is, the professionals are doing it. We should start doing that as well. All right, so I just want to comment that just like in the real world, when you meet someone, you usually smile and wave, and when you leave, you smile and wave as well. Apply that to the virtual world as well, because it's your first and last impression. Always try thinking about how can, what do we do in real life? How are we meeting when we go into a meeting, etc. And you're applying those same principles virtually. A few more do's and don'ts, and you might have thoughts on this. We'll see. Would you show up to a meeting with a bag over your head?
I hope not.
Probably not. This one, as we go further along, we're trying to figure this out. But again, you wouldn't go to a meeting with a bag over your head. So why aren't you showing up and being present when you're going to virtual meetings? There's a variety of reasons why. Many are legit, but just I want you to be thinking about that. As far as like etiquette and civility, if their camera's on, yours should be too.
Well, and I, not terribly long ago, actually had a connection with LinkedIn, and I think they were seeking coaches, for work or something, but she wouldn't turn on her camera. And that lessened my trust of that individual. And so I think that there is something to be said about that absolutely you don't walk into a space with a bag on your head doing the same. Now, granted, there are technological issues that can happen, but saying that ahead of time, I think, is important.
Right. And explain, because you might be having tech issues. You might not be feeling well. It could be a really distracting background. There's a million reasons why it's legit. And I think I even saw someone put in a comment here, before we got started. You're just saying like, pardon me, I'm not able to use, oh yeah, Darla, I'm on an old computer. Perfect, right? That you are explaining why. Otherwise, typically the presenter's thinking, oh, they're not paying attention or they're multitasking. I have these slides because I've done a fair amount of presentations for like a university or someone, and their big complaint is the students don't turn their cameras on, and that's driving them insane. So just give this some thought.
Well, and I like how Robin notes, just if you have to have your camera off, just mention it in the chat or during the introduction point, because people will appreciate that honesty.
Right. Or if you need to step away, like a nonverbal, and then putting your picture up. Right. Okay. So a couple things with eye contact. This is the one that is very different virtually than it is in person. In person, I'm looking at your eyes. When we're communicating on a virtual platform, you need to be looking at the camera. And that doesn't feel natural. Hopefully it's getting a little bit better for you, but I'm literally looking at my little green dot, and I'm hoping to be making eye contact with you through that dot.
Right, because when you don't look at the camera, what does it look like,
Okay, so yeah, if I'm kind of reading my slide and I'm looking around, I'm guessing you can maybe see that difference. But when I go back to looking at the camera and making eye contact with you, you can feel that difference. So a couple things here. You can put like a picture. This is a picture of my mom. So I'm talking to my mom right now. You can put a sticky note, a smiley face sticky note. You can move your thumbnail to right below the camera. Those are all ways to just kind of keep you trained on the camera. The big one, the one that I think most people aren't doing, don't realize, forget, don't understand, is raising your device to eye height. I see a lot of people doing their laptop or their iPad or their phone on their lap. And first of all, those are horrible, unflattering angles. So there's that. But it also can come across as aggressive because someone is like literally looking down at you. It can feel a little bit threatening. That comes through the camera as well. So get a stack of books, crate, buy a laptop riser, whatever it is, make sure that you are speaking at eye height. So here's my little setup. Here's a picture of my daughter from 15 years ago. It just makes me smile. And here is the newest kind of challenge. Actually put in the chat. I'm curious to see how many of you actually have multiple screens. Curious to hear about that. This has been the newest challenge because people start looking away at their screens. They are engaged, but they're looking at their notes or other things, and then they're not looking at you. And that feels like multitasking. And it might be that they really are. They're looking at their phone, someone's talking to them, etc. But we certainly feel that.
Well, and a lot of people have mentioned in the chat that they have multiple screens ranging from 2 to 3.
Okay, well, I would love to hear your advice. So a bonus tip, fronting is a body language cue that when you are fully facing someone, top, torso, toes, when you're fully facing, that is the ultimate nonverbal respect. It shows you are completely attentive. So when we when we move our feet even slightly off, you can feel that difference. In the virtual world, just kind of even looking away a little bit, we know that you're not fully engaged.
Right.
Again,
Elvira puts in the chat, and I would agree with this, to have an external webcam on your main screen and then zooms right in front of you. And so that webcam to me really helps me focus on where I'm supposed to look and having it directly in front.
right. Right. And I don't know that I have the answer yet, other than sort of owning it, like, hey, I'm paying attention. My notes are over here, or I'm listening, acknowledging it. And I think as we go, I mean, it's been a year that people realize, but you're showing, and make sure you're constantly going back and you're making sure that people know you're engaged.
And that's the important part, right? Is just to be engaged and connected.
Right. Okay. So we can do a few questions because we want to do a little bit of breakout room as well. So any questions popping up before I give you your next steps?
One question.
Yeah.
So for my, I'm thinking about my son who's going to be doing interviews. He's college aged, and the first interview is going to be for sure over Zoom, right? It's not going to be in person, and it's not going to be over the phone. So would you recommend the wave and greet in a situation like that?
Yeah. What's your son's name?
Nathan.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Nathan. Great to meet you. I mean, it doesn't have to be like,
Just that wouldn't be him, but
yeah.
okay.
Mm-hmm. Or if that's like, oh my gosh, mom, that's crazy. Just make sure he's pushed back far enough where he can be using his hands.
Okay.
But most people are like, hi, great to see. I can hear and see you perfectly. Nice to meet you.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I actually have a question for you, Kristin, regarding cultural differences, because some of the things you talk about, I'm a mutt, so I'm a mix of a bunch of different cultures. So this is something I'm conscious of, and always giving other people space for whatever's normal to them. So I don't know if you have any comments, or I'm sure this has come up before.
Yeah, so you're right. There's cultural emblems. So this, in different cultures, like those are big no-nos. You do not do that. Even holding hands, there are cultural differences, and space is a big one. In our country, it's about 1.5 to 3 feet that people need. So even like I'm an arm length away, that's sort of my rule of thumb, like that. This is how close I would be if we were in real life. So I'm echoing that in the virtual world as well. There are some people that they talk closer. Kind of a way to figure out is if you plant yourself and then you see how close they come up, they're telling you what kind of space they need. You can start figuring out like, oh, Ben needs a little bit more than Sally, kind of thing.
Well, and it makes me think of that episode on Seinfeld, The Close Talker, where it's a really great, it's humorous, where it's like they're talking right into the face, and that's obviously a breaking of a bubble. And as a theater person, I don't really have a social bubble, but I'm very much in tune and aware that that can make people uncomfortable. So again, it's that postural echo, or that mirroring of understanding, exactly tuning into that energy and how they use the space.
Right. Well, and I'll just share. So 26 years of my career, I worked with people with developmental disabilities. And that is partly why I do what I do, because I worked with people that were nonverbal. And one of the guys that I adore, we worked on showing appropriate space, because he would come up and he would be hanging on you and talking to you. I loved him. I thought he was fantastic. And a couple of my colleagues, that drove them insane. Like they needed a bigger bubble and they could not tolerate that at all, where I was like, this guy is awesome. So there's personal, there's cultural.
Well, Marcy mentions that's the work she's doing right now. So that's wonderful. It's important work. Any last question before we dive into the next phase?
I guess with that space information, does that apply for virtual? Like I usually get real close to my screen because I need to see a little better up close.
Because we wear glasses. Yeah.
Right. Yes. And so should it be better that I back away, or is it okay to come close? Is there an issue?
Well, it's your intent. I would say for the most part, arm length, and make sure they can see hands. But one of a nonverbal body language cue is when you lean in. It's like I'm sharing something important. I have a bit of a secret. I mean, so that can be strategic too, or, you know, so that can be a way to show agreement where I'm getting closer, but then I would eventually pull back, because otherwise you're in someone's face. It's like being in an elevator, you know, where you're like, oh, so yeah.
And nobody wants, I had an actual project where I had to break a couple nonverbal rules. And one was I stood in an elevator and actually looked at the people. You know what you do in an elevator? You look at the numbers, you know, going up or down. Well, I turned around and looked at them. Let me tell you the amount of awkwardness that was, not just for them, but for me, because we're not, when you break those rules or you move someone's stuff, it's very uncomfortable. We have expectations of spaces or space.
Right.
There's a question here. When others give you a hug and you're not a hugger, are they doing it to show warmth or letting you know you might be distant?
Oh, I don't know. I would need more context, I think, on that. But if you are not a hugger, just when someone starts to come up, just like kind of offering your hand, you beat them to the punch. That's like, oh, I'm a handshake person. That's a way to kind of diffuse that. But yeah, call me.
I like the diffuse it with the handshake, like, just kidding. You know?
Yeah, well, just show your intent, like what
Right.
you want. I mean, be assertive. Okay, keep the questions coming. I'm just gonna move us along and we can circle back to that. I want to make sure you have a few minutes to kind of go through things. So next steps. First thing, if this is interesting to you, you can check out my website, which is bodylanguageblueprints.com. I'm also on LinkedIn. I think there's probably so many cool people here. I would love to connect on LinkedIn and then see what you're doing. And then if you want to kind of learn more skills, you can join my Facebook group. I just started it in end of December, I think. And so I have a business page. Make sure you join the group. They're both Body Language Blueprints. The group, I try and share tips and tricks and different things, so that's where you can do a little bit more learning. So, okay, Tina, did you want to?
Yes, and I want to let you all know that I have some really exciting individual and group coaching programs coming up starting April 5th. So if you want to up level, there are 3-month signature coaching program, whether it's just you and you want to get better at storytelling, public speaking, whatever that skill is. If you have a goal to do a keynote or TEDx, or if you have a team at your organization, I do as well team coaching. And that's starting April 5th. If you commit to that by March 31st, it's a 10% discount. So FYI on that. Also, April 21st, put on your calendars, creating the virtual experience Disney style. There's 2 Disney cast members, me and another gal, Amy Garlick, who is a Power Up CEO. That's her job. She makes the experience virtually powerful. Check it out. It is April 21st, 11:30 Central Standard Time. If you're interested, check out tinabakehouse.com, but also email me at tinab@tinabakehouse.com, and I will put that in the chat. And I know that Robin knows Amy, and she is awesome. So join us for that wonderful webinar.
Okay, and I so want to see that. All right, we want to give you a few minutes to just sort of work through some of the stuff we talked about today, share your aha moment. So we're going to do breakout rooms. Tina, what do you think in 5? So we have about 5 minutes. I'd love to hear any feedback, insights, or if you have a question.
We had a question at the end about your recommendations about virtual backgrounds.
Okay, about using like the Zoom background. Yeah, okay. I'm trying to find like solid research, but basically what I've learned is like the 3, like real, a plain wall, or Zoom is last. And my hunch is, like that. Okay, yeah. So Robin,
Yes.
Perfect. Yes. The reason that one isn't like, it's super fun. Like if you're with friends or whatever, that is really great. But in a professional setting, what people are reporting is they know it's fake. So it kind of comes across as inauthentic. Mm-hmm. And just that whole pixelated thing, unless you are bald or whatever, people can, or unless you have a high-end green screen.
Well, it's also distracting. I feel like too, your gestures get all wanky because they start to disappear. And I was on that learning curve where I actually was using an iPad my first few times, and my husband had changed it to the stars and the moon in the background. And it looked cool for a hot minute until my hand just disappeared into the abyss. And I thought, well, that's funny. So I made the joke, I'm out of this world, because I did not know how to switch it. And we finally figured it out.
So what I've been telling people is, like, if you could just, this is a corner of a room, you know, if you can just kind of claim a space. Cheap things are, you can do like Sandy has a blind, right? The curtain, that is you, Marcy. Yeah, I mean, you can start to figure out. I actually had someone say they were on a call with someone and it was the most beautiful background. And when they asked, it was a shower curtain. The guy had gone in the basement, and anyway, it was apparently an amazing shower curtain. There are things you can do on the cheap, but you know, if you are kind of working from home now, I would be thinking about, how am I showing up? What can I do? I'm trying to brand with, I do communication. I've got speech bubbles. And then I've got my little, my seasonal items I'm trying to add in, because what that becomes, if I'm like one-on-one, it's like a conversation piece. Cute rabbit, or now I can learn a little bit more about them. And that is why people like to actually see your house, is they can gain intel. They can figure out, oh, that's what she has. That's why we really, you're kind of snooping. We like that.
Well, and I love the conversation bubbles. I'm like, can I get some of those? Those are great.
My friend's dad built them.
Kristin, I was also talking about an earlier discussion. You had given us some tips and about the snowball microphone.
Yes.
So like the noise eliminating kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is kind of the low end. I'm actually, you know, now that this is like dragging on, I'm thinking I might snowball, and then snowball also makes Yeti. There's a couple different versions. This was maybe 60 to 80 bucks. I think you get into like 100 and 120. The thing with virtual is you need to be able to hear someone, or it's like a game changer. Like you can't have the meeting if it's cutting in and out. So I would invest in a microphone. I'm thinking of maybe upgrading. I don't know. My snowball has been good.
Well, Elvira was showing her very committed microphone. That's awesome. And I have one too that is a really good one. It's I think a 5 Fine or something like that. I've grown to like it, especially when I learned that it doesn't automatically connect to your laptop. You have to click on the USB. Lessons learned. And lighting is also important too. I have artificial lighting, so you can really see the facial expressions and the gestures and things like that. Because here in Iowa, with all the windows in my office, it can get really dark. So it's important to have the lighting appropriate.
Yeah, lighting background. Elvira, what is your microphone? What's the brand?
Oh, I just used the one off the webcam, but you were talking about the Yeti. I happen to have one in my office for other projects, not for Zoom.
Okay.
For Zoom, I just used the audio off my webcam.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah, I think the snowball, I mean, that's like an easy, like it's solid. I really like it, but if you're doing a lot of work online, you might want to get a little more snazzy.
Exactly. Well, it looks like we have about 2 minutes left. Is there one more pressing question or thought or comment? I see Robin.
The other comment that I shared with people that I discovered is that being careful with your gestures, because like what would normally look normal in real life, you need to keep it close to yourself when you're making gestures to make it look a little more relatably normal.
Right, because it can get too close.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's a great point.
Yeah, very good. Although, so one of the big things that I try to do is, you know, virtually, I'm trying to build trust. I'm trying to show my hands, and sometimes gesturing to people is a way to kind of build that. Even I just was at a training and they talked about even having a chat. That's a way for people to feel like they're part of a tribe and they can trust you more because they're not the only one. There's more people. Again, our brain is always like, am I fine? Am I fine? Am I fine?
Right.
So these little things that you can do to build that trust are incredibly important. Yeah.
Well, somebody mentioned 3D Zoom. Elvira mentioned that. I think that would be a hoot. I don't know what that is like. I've never used it. Have you used it, Elvira?
I've never heard it.
I was just joking. I
I know, I think it'd be awesome.
If Zoom was in 3D, that's all I meant.
Oh, I think that would be awesome. So then you can really get the full perspective. Well, it looks like we're at time. So I would love for all of you, if you're interested in connecting with Kristin Bock, I'll have her give her information. If you're interested in connecting with me, Tina B at tinabakehouse.com for coaching programs, a discovery call, connection. April 21st is creating the virtual experience Disney style. Check that out, 11:30 Central Standard Time. And Kristin, your information again?
Yeah, so I would say if you are curious, if you go to my website, bodylanguageblueprints.com, I've got blogs. You can start reading and learning about different topics. You can sign up to get, a weekly tip, and also check out my Facebook group then, because you can ask questions there as well. And Joanne and Sandy are in my group.
I am too.
And Tina, I put up a photo, a first impression photo, people give their words, and then I just do a really short live on Monday, kind of breaking down a body language cue. So if nothing else, you can do it for that.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much to all of you for joining us, and do check out Kristin's website, her Facebook group, as well as tinabakehouse.com, and look forward to hopefully seeing you next month, if not before.
Perfect. Nice to meet everyone.